This video is brought to you by .store domains.
There's too much Pedro Pascal happening at once.
Pedro Pascal is everywhere.
Everywhere.
Pedro Pascal's in everything
these days.
Pedro Pascal's in everything at the moment.
He's in everything.
He's collecting franchises like Infinity Stones.
It's a little too much Pedro Pascal.
Getting a little too much Pedro Pascal.
So many things with Pedro in them.
Moderate Faustian deal he made. How much Pedro Pascal is too much Pedro Pascal?
Sure, it feels like Pedro Pascal is everywhere. What you're not seeing is why.
My entry level lasted about 15 years. Early in my career, I played small parts in every crime show.
Put your hands up! Keep them up!
You set me up?
Because 5 minutes ago, he was nowhere.
And then it was a game of survival. Auditioning my ass off as much as I could. I knew how to go on auditions. And there would be good months, bad months, good year, bad year. I didn't get it, and then I did not, and then I did not, and then I did not. What it started to feel like as you get older and start to get into your 30s.
You find yourself suddenly in your mid-30s and can't live off the next off-Broadway show.
And you're still doing this, and you're still going on auditions and everything. And
how did you keep going when nothing was working out?
Oh, sorry.
No, I wasn't looking.
This is one of the biggest jobs I ever got in my life. I did get a part on Buffy, which was incredibly exciting to me.
Yeah, maybe we can help each other figure out what the hell they're talking about.
Okay.
Everybody was dying to be on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So when I got season 4 premiere episode, I couldn't believe it. I was like, well, I'm shooting to the top. And then I died after one scene.
I was worried that something had happened to you, and of course it has, because you're a vampire. I'm sorry.
I'm not.
I had, less than $7 in my account, and a residual from Buffy the Vampire Slayer showed up and saved the day, and literally is the reason I was able to stay in it and not give up.
Really, it wasn't until one day in 2013 that everything changed.
There was like a screen description, and it described this man that was like in his late 30s, early 40s, had daughters, and da-da-da. And I was like, is this real? And then they said, actually casting would like to see what you do with the material. And I was like, okay. So I put myself on tape for him. I'd like to speak with him now. And to be honest with you, you may not enjoy it as much as you think you would. I was like, I'll never get this.
Because Pedro wasn't just used to rejection. He inherited it. Today, I spent 15 minutes moving one keyframe. There. And the annoying thing is, it matters. It really does. Because whether it's writing, editing, or selling merch, every detail counts. That's why a .store domain is a no-brainer. Your store's URL shouldn't look like a Wi-Fi password. It needs to be clean, memorable, and accurately say what it is. A store. Look at that, just beautiful. Your name plus your .store domain is all your audience needs to find your merch. And more clicks equals more sales, which is why .store is used by the world's biggest creators. Time is ticking. Is this you? Don't let someone else snatch your dream store URL. So lock in your .store domain before it's too late. Links in the description.
1973, Chile. The world's only freely elected Marxist president is overthrown by military coup. After 128 years of democracy, Chile had become a military dictatorship.
Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship was one of the most terrifying and violent periods of Chilean history.
In Santiago, bodies floated in the currents of the Mapocho River each morning, victims of killings the night before.
This was the period when that ominous word, the disappeared, emerged.
Arrests continue day and night, and are made for weird reasons. Last night, 60 people were taken in for spreading false rumors.
General Pinochet's regime was a criminal regime.
In the days following the coup, soldiers rounded up thousands of Chileans. Workers, students, politicians, and artists were arrested and imprisoned. In all, it is estimated that more than 30,000 people were killed during the coup.
My parents became political refugees when I was just a baby.
You were born in Chile. Your parents, Veronica and Jose, were young liberals in their 20s combating a sort of militaristic regime in that country at the time.
My dad was doing his residency at the University Hospital, at La Católica it's called, and so there was a gunfight that my parents were not involved in, but somebody was wounded, and they brought him to my parents' house so that my father could help tend the wound, hide them for a while. The person that brought them to our house, he was taken into custody and tortured and gave names, and then they came looking for my parents. So then my parents had to go into hiding for about 6 months. I was 9 months old when we left Chile. We were in Denmark like under a year, and we ended up in San Antonio. And then we watched so many movies.
Well, it's interesting because it wasn't something that we talked about very much.
And so I started to develop a real fear of like camouflaged military guards with machine guns. I remember seeing Indiana Jones like running across the playing field with Karen Allen in that white dress, and Karen Allen looked so much like my mother. And so I started to imagine things like that, like my father and mother hand in hand, like running as like they were being shot at across like a dusty sort of airplane field. I saw Missing Myself when I was a kid, which deals with the military dictatorship in Chile at the time. It had such an imprint in my, brain when I saw it because of how closely I could relate it to my parents' experience. And there was a moment where Sissy Spacek's character, she doesn't make it home before curfew, and she just kind of gets trapped in the city. And again, sort of a beautiful, small-framed woman that reminded me so much of my mother, and how to sort of project these kinds of images of my mother into these character circumstances, knowing somehow at such a young age that if my parents were there, they would take them away and maybe kill them. I just remember completely falling apart when she was in danger and when she was so afraid, and imagining that that could have happened to my mother. I remember having a little bit of a breakdown. I think about this now in my middle age, that how strange it is to get information in that way through cinema.
In the house, no one in the family talked about it.
Yeah.
And it took a film from Hollywood to kind of give language to something no one was giving language to.
Yeah.
By the time you were 11, you'd already traveled the world.
No, my parents were really cool. They were young and figuring stuff out, and that meant taking us to the movies like 3 times a week, whatever they wanted to see.
We got cable television pretty early, and then my father loved to go to the movies. So it imprinted itself very early, the world of movies. It became, I want to be in movies, and it didn't really change. And then when we moved to California, I literally remember telling my mother, we're in California. I want to go to acting classes.
Yeah.
It became a hobby that my parents allowed me to indulge. And then it became a very serious training as an artist, and getting a degree. I wanted to go to New York.
Yeah.
I wanted to, at that point, I'd fallen in love with theater. I had started to just consume plays like it was television. Going from being a relatively sheltered kid in Orange County to living in New York. Everyone way cooler than you, more talented, better, smarter. It's just sort of like thinking that you're the shit and then realizing that you are insignificant. There was a friend of mine in my freshman acting class named Eugene Bird. In his generosity, he said, I think you should meet my manager. I think you're really good. And I started to get auditions. And to me, so that left me under the impression that it was just going to happen, like immediately.
I mean, I have to imagine you were a pretty good auditioner, because once you graduated, it seemed like you started working quite a bit right out of the gate.
So you have representation.
Yeah.
You're 22, 23.
Yeah.
Agent, manager. Have a couple of parts in something.
Got my SAG.
Oh, you got your SAG?
Job,
Well, so you had some footing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought so. I'd been testing for a pilot called Dark Angel, which was a really big deal at the time because it was sort of the first thing that James Cameron's name was attached to after Titanic, which again was going to be the thing that was going to change my life.
Instead, your life changes in a completely different way.
Yeah.
How does a 23-year-old you make sense of your mom's passing at that age?
It was obviously very traumatic because she died in Chile. It means the services are immediate. So it was getting the news and then getting on a plane and flying overnight to Santiago to go to a funeral. I remember it being an unbelievable thing to get through, to be honest with you.
What do you mean by unbelievable?
I just loved her so much, and she's just kind of the, love of my life in a way. It was summer in Chile as well, so it was very beautiful out, and it was a very beautiful day, and none of that seemed to coincide very well with what was happening. The world doesn't stop, and the sun doesn't stop shining, and it was meant to, emotionally. It was hard for me to register, just to comprehend that you could be in a car going to a cremation service and see a family kind of like playing in the yard, experiencing something so drastically different right in front of you.
That other people could be experiencing joy.
Not even mildly, like a beautiful summer day. And I remember that more than anything. Everything stopped, and I was very resentful that nothing stopped. Part of carrying on was wanting to get work, and yet it seemed so absurd to feel preoccupied by an audition for maybe a television show or something like that, or a beer commercial.
It felt silly in contrast to what had happened.
Yeah, it was just it seemed too ridiculous. And I just grew up as Pedro. So Balmaceda is my last name. It's my father's name. Pascal being the maiden name. Balmaceda was impossible for people to pronounce, and it just wasn't helping me in terms of auditions and casting. And Pascal is very easy to read and say out loud, and it always felt like a part of my identity. And so when my mother passed away, I made a gradual transition to Pascal.
By 2001, Pascal lived in Red Hook, Brooklyn with his closest friend, a pit bull mix called Greta. Having been chewed up and spat out by New York, Pedro opted for regional theater, shipping off across the US to quietly establish himself on stage. But for the next decade, what followed was a bit of this and that, here and there. Until that all changed.
I was watching it like a proper fan. I was even like all caught up when the audition came around. There was like a screen description, and it described this man that was like in his late 30s, early 40s, had daughters and da-da-da. And I was like, is this real? And then they said, actually casting would like to see what you do with the material. And I was like, okay. So I put myself on tape for it.
I'd like to speak with the mountain.
And to be honest with you, I
may not enjoy it as much as you think you would.
I was like, I'll never get this. And I was like, no one's going to see this. And it's that issue of like invisibility that you feel, How are they going to pay attention?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to see you? It doesn't matter. Very painful. And so I call Sarah Paulson, who I know is best friends with Amanda Peet, who's married to Game of Thrones. It was more a matter of like, look, I've done this. No one's really going to see it. If you have the time, like, look at it. If you think anything of it, I don't know, whatever. She, being Sarah Paulson, is like, you give me that tape right now. Sat down with Amanda, like watched it immediately, and then insisted that David watch it. And it kind of like, it didn't, just happen unknown by comparison. it hasn't been the same for me since.
Just as Pedro stepped into a new life, his companion, Greta's, was ending. She'd carried him this far, but she wouldn't be there to see what came next.
That was the first time I experienced sort of a larger exposure in relation to work in a big way. And so because of Game of Thrones, I got Narcos. It is an honor being a part of these huge franchises like Game of Thrones and Star Wars.
Pedro Pascal has been cast as the Mandalorian.
Pedro Pascal has been cast as Joel.
In the adaptation of the game The Last of Us for HBO,
it's been a dream to join the MCU.
Will protect you. I'm still getting used to people recognizing me.
I feel good when people recognize me. Sometimes I feel surprised.
So do you feel like an overnight success, or you're suddenly so visible that it's like, where'd he come from?
Although it had been burning for a long time, there appeared to be a new star in the sky. But wait, is it getting bigger?
Pedro Pascal is everywhere.
Pedro Pascal is everywhere.
Everywhere.
I mean everywhere.
There is no escape.
Pedro Pascal is in.
Pedro Pascal's in everything.
Everything.
Dude, Pedro Pascal's in everything.
I literally have watched so many things with Pedro in them recently.
He does not say no to
He does not.
Pedro Pascal's in everything at the moment.
There's too much Pedro Pascal happening at once.
He's collecting franchises like Infinity Stones.
It's a little too much Pedro Pascal.
I'm getting a little too much Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I'm invited to the table, and I have a seat at the table, and I deserve to be here. But you know, the other part of me is like glitching out, and I think that that's something worth coming into full acceptance of, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for those influences.
You only notice someone this much when they stop hiding. Call it too much, or call it what it took.
What is it about Pedro that seems to have everyone so enchanted?
Pedro has become the new Coca-Cola.
Yes.
You're so immense and incredible. You fall into your characters in a way that I think is so gracious.
Yeah, he's been my dearest friend since I was 19 years old.
I feel protective of him. He's one of my best friends.
He's so wonderful. He's talented, he's nice, he's funny.
You had this childhood dream. The dream worked out a little bit and very quickly in your early 20s. Then the world kind of came crashing down on you, and it made you reset your expectations. You've done so much in the last 5 years. That childhood dream has been actualized, and yet I'm curious for you as we leave. Did you get what you wanted?
Yeah, more than what I wanted.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pedro Pascal!
Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. I had the fantasy of this kind of work since I was a child. I was born in Chile, and 9 months later, my parents fled Pinochet and brought me and my sister to the U.S. The way that it shaped me, it sort of turned me into somebody who can be anywhere. Invite me over, we'll have a good time. They were so brave, and without them, I wouldn't be here in this wonderful country, and I certainly wouldn't be standing here with you all tonight. We all connect with loss, because being alive means losing things.
You have no idea what loss is.
Got to the big deal stuff later in my life, so I kind of came to it fully cooked and so fully developed by those influences.
Be good to yourself and be good to people. If you want to do any good, you gotta be good, and it's gotta start with yourself and those that are important to you. You stick around and I guess you force these opportunities to happen. I'm sorry to be such a cliche, but be yourself and make that your complete priority. Do not compromise anything that is true to yourself to meet some exterior standard. That doesn't work. The thing that works is that you be you. And that's the thing that people end up recognizing and falling in love with and wanting to experience. Your truest self.